The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window as Diana Miller flipped pancakes at the stove. The sizzle of batter hitting the hot pan mixed with the sounds of teenage boys laughing at the table behind her. At 16, her identical triplet sons were the center of her world. "Mom, Jesse's hogging all the syrup again," Jordan complained, reaching across the table. "Am not," Jesse protested, sliding the bottle toward his brother. "You just used too much." Diana smiled to herself. Even after 16 years, she sometimes had to look twice to tell them apart. Jamie, Jordan, and Jesse, her miracle boys as her mother called them. They had the same wavy brown hair, the same dimple in their left cheek when they smiled, and the same green eyes that sometimes made her heart catch when she looked at them. "All right, you three," Diana said, placing a fresh stack of pancakes on the table. "Eat up or you'll be late for school. And Jamie, don't forget you have basketball practice after school." Jamie nodded, his mouth already full of pancake. "Coach says I might start in Friday's game." "That's wonderful." Diana beamed with pride. She checked her watch and grabbed her nurse's bag from the counter. "I've got the early shift today, but Grandma Rose will be here when you get home. I should be back around 7. The boys nodded in unison, a habit that had always amused her. As she kissed each of them on the forehead, something they pretended to hate but secretly still enjoyed, Diana paused at the door. "Love you, boys. Be good for Grandma." "Love you too, Mom," they chorused back. Another triplet habit that made her smile. The boys watched their mother leave, her scrubs already on for her shift at the local hospital. None of them noticed how she lingered a moment longer than usual, or how she pressed her hand against her side where the pain had started 3 weeks ago. "She looks tired," Jamie said quietly after the door closed. Jordan shrugged. "She's always tired. That's what happens when you work at a hospital and raise 3 hungry teenagers." "Yeah, but she seems extra tired lately," Jesse added, pushing his pancakes around his plate. "I heard her up coughing last night." The three exchanged glances. They didn't need to speak to understand each other's thoughts, one of the strange bonds they shared as identical triplets. "Maybe we should help out more," Jamie suggested, standing to clear his plate. "Do more chores and stuff." "Yeah," his brothers agreed. Rose Miller, at 72, moved slower than she once had, but she still managed to keep up with her 3 grandsons. She arrived at her daughter's modest 2-story home just as the school bus dropped the boys off. "Grandma," Jessie called, the first through the door. "We're starving." Rose laughed, already pulling snacks from her bag. "You 3 are always starving. It's a wonder your mother can keep food in the house." The boys dropped their backpacks by the door and descended on the kitchen like a small army. Rose watched them fondly. They were good boys, respectful and kind, if a bit rowdy. Diana had done an amazing job raising them on her own. "How was school?" she asked, settling into her favorite chair at the kitchen table. "Boring," Jordan said. "Fine," Jamie added. "Ms. Peterson gave us a ton of homework," Jesse complained, opening his math textbook. Rose nodded, letting them ramble about their day. As they talked, she thought about how quickly they'd grown. It seemed like yesterday they were 3 identical toddlers running her ragged while Diana worked double shifts to keep a roof over their heads. "Grandma?" Jamie's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Is Mom okay?" The question hung in the air. Rose hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "What makes you ask that, dear?" The boys exchanged glances again. "She seems different," Jamie explained. "Tired all the time." "And she barely ate anything at dinner last night," Jordan added. "Plus she keeps having those doctor appointments," Jessie said quietly. Rose sighed. Diana had made her promise not to worry the boys, but they were observant. They knew their mother better than anyone. "Your mom's been feeling a bit under the weather," Rose admitted. "But you know how stubborn she is. She doesn't like to complain." "Is it serious?" Jamie asked, his voice small. Rose reached out and squeezed his hand. "Your mother is the strongest person I know. Don't you worry too much." The answer didn't satisfy them, but they nodded anyway. Rose changed the subject, asking about upcoming tests and basketball games. The conversation shifted, but she noticed The worried glances they continued to exchange. Diana arrived home at 7:30, later than promised. She looked pale, and there were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. "Sorry I'm late," she said, hanging her coat by the door. "Got held up at work." The boys were sprawled across the living room doing homework. They looked up when she entered, their expressions a mixture of relief and concern. "There's a plate for you in the microwave," Rose said, emerging from the kitchen. "Chicken casserole." "Thanks, Mom, but I grabbed something at the hospital," Diana replied, though everyone in the room knew it was probably a lie. "Mom, sit down," Jamie said, patting the sofa beside him. "We want to talk to you." Diana raised an eyebrow but sank onto the couch. Her 3 sons immediately surrounded her, a protective circle of teenage energy. "What's going on?" she asked, looking from one identical face to another. "That's what we want to know," Jordan said firmly. "You're sick, aren't you?" Diana's eyes widened, then darted to her mother, who shook her head slightly. "I didn't tell them," Rose said. "They figured it out themselves." Diana sighed and reached out to touch each of her sons' faces gently. "I was going to tell you this weekend," she admitted. "I didn't want to worry you during school." "Tell us what?" Jesse demanded, his voice cracking slightly. "I have something called pancreatic cancer," Diana said, her voice steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes. It's pretty serious." The room fell silent. Jamie was the first to move, wrapping his arms around his mother. His brothers followed, creating a huddle of fierce, protective love. "Are you going to be okay?" Jordan asked, his voice muffled against her shoulder. Diana held them tightly. "I'm fighting it with everything I've got," she promised. "I've started treatment and the doctors are doing their best." "But you're a nurse," Jesse said, pulling back to look at her. "You know about this stuff. Will you get better?" Diana met his gaze, then looked at each of her sons. She had never lied to them before, and she wouldn't start now. "I don't know," she said honestly. "This type of cancer is very aggressive, but I'm not giving up, not for a second." Rose wiped tears from her eyes, watching her daughter's courage in the face of her 3 terrified sons. "We'll help," Jamie declared, his jaw set in determination. "Whatever you need." "Yeah," his brothers echoed. "We'll do everything." Diana smiled, through her tears. "I know you will. You 3 have always been my strength." Later that night, after the boys had finally gone to bed, Rose found Diana sitting at the kitchen table, staring at an old photo album. "They took it better than I expected," Diana said quietly as her mother sat beside her. "They're strong like you," Rose replied, taking her daughter's hand. "But Diana, don't you think it's time to—" "No," Diana cut her off. "He made his choice a long time ago. The boys don't need him now, not after 16 years. Rose sighed. "But if things get worse, then you'll take care of them," Diana said firmly. "Like you've always helped me take care of them. They don't even know he exists, and that's how it should stay." Rose didn't argue, though her heart ached with the weight of secrets kept too long. She looked down at the photo Diana had been staring at, a young couple, smiling and in love before everything fell apart. "They look more like him every day," Rose said softly. Diana closed the album. "They're my boys. That's all that matters now." Over the next few weeks, the Miller household settled into a new routine. The triplets took over most of the chores without being asked. Jamie learned to do laundry, Jordan tackled the cooking, and Jesse kept track of Diana's medications and appointments. They worked together seamlessly, the way they always had. At school, they kept their mother's illness private, not wanting pity or special treatment. But at home, they watched her like hawks, noticing every wince of pain, every meal, barely touched. "You 3 don't have to babysit me," Diana protested one evening when she caught them watching her push food around her plate. "We're not babysitting," Jesse said. "We're helping." "Yeah," Jordan added. "Like you've always helped us." Diana's eyes filled with tears. I'm supposed to be taking care of you, not the other way around. Family takes care of each other, Jamie said simply, in a tone that reminded Diana so much of someone else that it made her heart ache. That night, as the boys did homework at the kitchen table, Diana watched them from the doorway. They were, becoming young men right before her eyes. Good, kind, responsible young men. Despite everything, she had done that much right. None of them noticed how she pressed her hand against her side, where the pain was getting worse, or how she leaned against the doorframe for support. In that moment, looking at her 3 identical sons, her whole world, Diana made a silent promise. No matter what happened, she would protect them for as long as she could. They would never know the pain of being abandoned by someone who should have loved them. They would never know that somewhere out there, a man who shared their green eyes and dimpled smile had walked away before they were even born. They were hers and only hers. That's how it had always been, and that's how she would make sure it stayed, even if her time with them was running out faster than any of them realized. 2 months after her diagnosis, Diana's condition deteriorated rapidly. The triplets watched helplessly as their mother grew thinner, her once vibrant face now hollow-cheeked and pale. The hospital stays became more frequent, each one longer than the last. On a cold Tuesday morning, Jamie sat beside his mother's hospital bed pretending to read a book while actually watching her sleep. The steady beep of machines had become a familiar soundtrack to their lives. Jordan and Jesse were at school. They had worked out a rotation, so one of them was always with their mom while the others kept up with classes. Diana stirred, her eyelids fluttering open. "Jamie?" she whispered, her voice raspy. "I'm right here, Mom." He set his book down and leaned closer, taking her hand. "Do you need anything? Water?" She shook her head slightly. "What time is it?" "Almost noon. Jordan and Jesse will be here after school." Jamie forced a smile. "Jesse's bringing your favorite chocolate pudding from the cafeteria." Diana's lips curved into a weak smile. "You 3 take such good care of me." "Well, we learned from the best," Jamie said, squeezing her hand gently. Diana's eyes filled with tears. "I need to tell you something important, sweetheart." She tried to sit up, wincing with the effort until Jamie helped adjust her pillows. "Mom, you should rest," he said, worry creasing his forehead. "No, this can't wait." Diana's green eyes, the same shade as her son's, were suddenly sharp and clear. "In my closet at home on the top shelf there's a blue box. Inside are papers you'll need. Insurance information, the deed to the house, my will." "Mom, don't talk like that," Jamie interrupted, his voice cracking. "You're going to get better." Diana reached up to touch his cheek. "I need to know you boys will be taken care of. The house is paid for. There's some money set aside for college. Grandma Rose knows everything." Jamie nodded, fighting back tears. "Okay, but we don't need to worry about that stuff now." Diana's grip on his hand tightened. "Promise me something. Anything. Promise you'll always look after your brothers. You 3 need to stick together no matter what." "I promise," Jamie whispered. "But Mom, you'll be there too." Diana didn't answer. She just smiled sadly and closed her eyes again, her hand still holding his. That evening, the triplets gathered in their mother's hospital room. Jesse had brought the promised pudding, but it sat untouched on the bedside table. Jordan was showing Diana pictures on his phone from their last basketball game, which she had been too sick to attend. "Coach says Jamie's got the best 3-point shot on the team," Jordan was saying, "but I'm faster." "You wish," Jamie scoffed, the familiar banter a thin veneer over their worry. "And Jesse's the best at defense," Diana added weakly. "My 3 stars." The door opened and Dr. Patel entered, clipboard in hand. The boys had come to know her well over the past weeks. She was their mother's oncologist and had always been straight with them. "Good evening, Miller boys," she greeted them. "Diana, how are you feeling tonight?" "Like I could run a marathon," Diana joked, though the effort of speaking left her breathless. Dr. Patel smiled kindly. "I need to check a few things. Would you boys mind stepping out for a moment?" The triplets exchanged glances. "We can stay," Jesse said firmly. "We're not kids." Diana nodded. It's okay. They can hear whatever you have to say. Dr. Patel's expression softened. She pulled up a chair and sat down, a gesture that immediately sent a chill through the room. Doctors in a hurry didn't sit down. The latest scans show the cancer has spread to your liver, Dr. Patel said gently, and there are new tumors in your lungs. The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of machines. What does that mean? Jordan asked, though his face suggested he already knew. Dr. Patel looked at each of them in turn, her gaze direct but compassionate. It means the treatment isn't working the way we hoped. The cancer is very aggressive. So try something else, Jesse said, his voice rising. There must be other treatments, other medications. We've tried the strongest options available, Dr. Patel explained. At this point, they're causing more harm than good. So what are you saying? Jamie demanded. Diana reached for his hand. She's saying it's time to stop fighting, honey. No. Jamie shook his head. No, that's not an option. How long? Jordan asked quietly, the only one who seemed able to process what was happening. Dr. Patel hesitated. It's hard to say exactly. Maybe a few weeks. Jesse made a choking sound and turned away, his shoulders shaking. Jordan put an arm around him, his own face wet with tears. Jamie just stared at the doctor, his expression shifting from disbelief to anger. You're supposed to help her, he said accusingly. That's your job. Jamie, Diana's voice was soft but firm. This isn't Dr. Patel's fault. She's done everything possible. Dr. Patel stood up. I'll give you all some time together. A nurse will. Be in shortly with pain medication. She touched Diana's shoulder gently. We'll keep you comfortable, Diana, I promise. After she left, the triplets moved closer to their mother's bed, forming a protective circle around her. No one spoke for a long time. I'm not afraid, Diana finally said, breaking the silence. I just hate leaving you boys. Then don't, Jesse pleaded, his voice small like a child's. Diana smiled through her tears. If I had a choice, I'd stay with you forever. You three are the best things I ever did. What are we supposed to do without you? Jordan asked, the usually practical middle triplet now lost. You'll take care of each other, Diana said firmly, and Grandma Rose will be there. You're stronger than you know. Jamie, who had been silent, suddenly stood up. This isn't happening, he said, backing toward the door. I can't. I need some air. He bolted from the room before his brothers could stop him. Jamie ran through the hospital corridors, ignoring calls from nurses to slow down. He burst through the main doors into the cold night air, gulping it in like he was drowning. The parking lot was nearly empty at this hour. Just a few cars belonging to night staff and visitors of patients too sick to be left alone. Patients like his mother. He made it to the small garden area at the side of the hospital before his legs gave out. Collapsing onto a bench, he finally let the tears come. Great heaving sobs that shook his entire body. Jamie? He looked up to see his grandmother standing there, her face lined with concern. Rose had been on her way in when she spotted her grandson running out. She's dying, Grandma, Jamie choked out. For real this time, the doctor said weeks. Rose sat beside him and pulled him into her arms, holding him tightly as he cried. At 72, she seemed suddenly much older, bent under the weight of impending loss. I know, sweetheart, she whispered. I know. It's not fair, Jamie said, when he could speak again. She's too young, we need her. Rose stroked his hair the same wavy brown as Diana's. Life isn't fair, Jamie, but your mother has packed more love into your 16 years than most people get in a lifetime. What's going to happen to us? You'll come live with me, of course, Rose said firmly. We'll get through this together. Jamie pulled away, wiping his face with his sleeve. Grandma, she told me about some blue box in her closet, with papers and stuff. Rose nodded. Yes, she's been getting everything in order. That's your mother, always thinking ahead, always taking care of her boys. Did she? Jamie hesitated. Did she ever talk about our father? The question seemed to catch Rose off guard. She looked away, out toward the dark parking lot. Why? Do you ask that now? Jamie shrugged. I don't know. I guess I was thinking that if we had a dad somewhere, he should know what's happening. Maybe he would help. Rose's expression hardened slightly. You don't need him. You never have. But who is he? Why did he leave? Mom never talks about him, not even when we ask. Some questions are better left unanswered, Jamie, Rose said, standing up. Come on now. Your mother needs you, and so do your brothers. Jamie knew that tone. It was the same one his mother used when a topic was closed for discussion. He followed his grandmother back into the hospital, the question of his missing father, pushed aside by the more immediate pain of his mother's condition. Diana came home from the hospital 3 days later. The doctors had done all they could, and she wanted to spend her remaining time in her own house, surrounded by the life she had built. The triplets transformed the living room into a bedroom so Diana wouldn't have to navigate the stairs. They set up her bed by the large window that overlooked the backyard, where she could see the maple tree she had planted when they were born. Hospice nurses came daily, adjusting medications and checking vitals, but it was the boys who provided most of the care. They developed a system taking shifts so someone was always with her. They played her favorite music, read to her from books she loved, and showed her old photo albums that made her smile despite the pain. Visitors came and went. Friends from the hospital where Diana had worked, neighbors bringing casseroles, a few teachers from the boys' school. Each time Diana rallied, putting on a brave face, but the triplets could see how each visit drained what little energy she had left. One evening, as Jordan helped her sip some water, Diana suddenly gripped his arm. Listen to me, she said urgently. In my dresser, bottom drawer, there's a letter for each of you. Promise me you'll read them, but only after. Jordan swallowed hard. We promise, Mom. Diana nodded, satisfied. Good boys. You've always been such good boys. Later that night, when Diana was sleeping, the triplets gathered in the kitchen. The strain of the past weeks showed on their identical faces, dark circles under their eyes, cheeks hollow from missed meals and stress. She's getting things ready, Jessie said quietly. Saying goodbye. Jordan nodded. The hospice nurse said it might be any day now. Jamie, who had been unusually quiet since their return from the hospital, looked up from the cup of cold coffee he'd been staring into. Did either of you ever wonder about our dad? His brothers stared at him, surprised by the sudden change of subject. Why are you thinking about that now? Jordan asked. Jamie shrugged. I don't know. It just seems weird that we don't know anything about him, like, was he tall? Are we going to go bald someday? Does he even know we exist? Mom always said he wasn't in the picture, Jessie said. I figured he died or something. But she never actually said that, Jamie pointed out. She just changed the subject whenever we asked. The three fell silent, each lost in thought. Outside, a light snow began to fall, dusting the world in white. Inside the small house, time seemed suspended, hanging between what had been and what was to come. Diana slipped away peacefully on a Tuesday morning in early February. The snow was falling gently outside her window, coating the world in pristine white. Jamie was reading to her from her favorite book, his voice soft and steady. Jordan was holding her hand. Jessie had just stepped out to make her some tea she would never drink. When Jamie looked up from the page, he knew immediately. The slight rise and fall of her chest had stopped. The pain lines around her eyes had smoothed out. She looked, for the first time in months, at peace. Mom? He whispered, though he already knew she wouldn't answer. Jordan reached over and gently touched her cheek. She's gone, he said, his voice breaking on the last word. Jessie came back into the room, mug of tea in hand. He took one look at his brothers' faces and the still form on the bed, and the mug slipped from his fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. No, he said, shaking his head. No, I just left for a minute. I was only gone a minute. Jamie stood and wrapped his arms around Jessie, who stood frozen in the doorway. It's okay. She wasn't alone. We were with her. The hospice nurse arrived 30 minutes later. She confirmed what they already knew and made the necessary calls. Rose arrived shortly after, her face aged a decade in a single morning. She gathered her grandsons close, the four of them clinging to each other as they watched the funeral home staff take Diana's body away. The next few days passed in a blur. Rose handled most of the arrangements, but the boys insisted on being involved. They chose the casket, cherry wood, simple but elegant. They selected photos for the memorial service. They picked out the clothes their mother would be buried in. Her favorite blue dress, the one she wore to their middle school graduation. Friends and neighbors filled the house, bringing food no one ate and offering condolences that changed nothing. The triplets moved through it all like sleepwalkers, going through the motions of gratitude but feeling nothing beyond the vast, echoing emptiness where their mother had been. The night before the funeral, after everyone had finally gone home, Rose found the boys in Diana's room. They were sitting on her bed, a blue box open between them. "You found it?" she said softly from the doorway. Jamie nodded. "The papers Mom mentioned. And these." He held up 3 sealed envelopes, each with one of their names written in Diana's neat handwriting. "Have you read them?" Rose asked. Jesse shook his head. "Not yet. We wanted to wait until after tomorrow, after we say goodbye." Rose nodded, understanding. "There's something else I need to give you." She crossed to Diana's dresser and opened the top drawer, reaching to the back. She pulled out a small velvet pouch. "Your mother wanted you to have these." She emptied the pouch into her palm. 3 identical silver chains, each with a small pendant. "Her medical alert bracelets?" Jordan asked, confused. Rose shook her head. "No, these were your baby bracelets from the hospital. She kept them all these years." She handed one to each boy. "She wanted you to wear them tomorrow." The triplets examined the tiny silver bands, now fashioned into necklaces. Each had one of their names and their birth date engraved on the inside. "She thought of everything," Jamie said, his voice thick with tears. "That was your mother," Rose said. "Always planning, always making sure you boys were taken care of." The triplets slipped the chains around their necks, another invisible thread connecting them to the mother they had lost. The day of the funeral dawned clear and cold. The snow had stopped, leaving the world sparkling and bright in a way that seemed cruel against their grief. The church was packed. Diana had been well loved in their small community. The triplets sat in the front row beside their grandmother, 3 identical figures in black suits, their faces solemn masks hiding the storm of emotions beneath. The died service was a blur of hymns and readings and people saying nice things about Diana. The boys heard it all as if from underwater, distant and muffled. It wasn't until the final viewing, when they approached the casket together, that the reality truly hit them. She looked like she was sleeping, her face peaceful, hands folded over a single white lily. But the vital spark that had made her their mother was gone. Jamie reached out and touched her hand one last time, cold and waxy, nothing like the warm fingers that had wiped away tears and checked for fevers and applauded at countless school events. "Goodbye, Mom," he whispered, his brothers echoing the words beside him. The cemetery was on a hill overlooking the town. Diana would be buried next to her father, who had died before the triplets were born. The boys stood beside the open grave, numb with cold and grief as the pastor said final prayers. It was Jordan who noticed him first, a tall man standing at a distance, half hidden by a large oak tree. He nudged Jesse and nodded in the stranger's direction. "Who's that?" Jesse whispered. "I don't recognize him from the church." Jamie followed their gaze. The man was watching the service intently, his face partially obscured by the upturned collar of his dark coat. There was something about his stance, the set of his shoulders, that seemed strangely familiar. As the service concluded and people began to disperse, offering final condolences to the family, the triplets kept glancing toward the oak tree. The stranger remained, making no move to approach but not leaving either. "Should we say something to Grandma?" Jordan asked as they walked back toward the line of cars. Jamie shook his head. Let's wait, see what he does. They lingered by their grandmother's car, watching as she spoke with the pastor. The cemetery had nearly emptied when the stranger finally moved. He approached the fresh grave slowly, head bowed. In his hand was a single white lily, identical to the one in Diana's casket. He brought Mom's favorite flower, Jessie said quietly. Who is he? The man knelt beside the grave, placing the lily carefully on the mound of dirt. He stayed there for a long moment, head bowed, before rising to his feet. When he turned, the triplets caught their first clear look at his face. It was like looking in a mirror, or rather a glimpse into their future. The same green eyes, the same jaw, the same dimple in the left cheek when his mouth tightened with emotion. Older, lined with years and grief, but unmistakably, shockingly familiar. Oh my God, Jordan breathed. He looks just like us. The man froze when he spotted them watching him. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other across the distance. The man's face a mixture of shock and something that might have been recognition. Then his gaze moved between the three identical faces and his expression crumpled. Before any of them could move, Rose stepped between them, her back to the triplets as she faced the stranger. Even from a distance, they could see the rigid set of her shoulders, the tension in her small frame. We should go over there, Jamie said, already taking a step forward. Wait. Jessie caught his arm. Look at Grandma, she's upset. They watched as Rose spoke to the man, her gestures sharp and angry. The man seemed to be pleading with her, his hands spread in a gesture of supplication. Whatever Rose said in response made him step back as if struck. He looked past her, his eyes finding the triplets again, lingering on their faces with an expression of such naked longing that all three boys felt it like a physical blow. Then he nodded at something Rose said, cast one last glance at Diana's grave, and walked away, shoulders slumped in defeat. Rose stood watching until he disappeared beyond the cemetery gates. Then she turned and walked back to her grandsons, her face composed but her eyes troubled. Who was that? Jamie demanded before she even reached them. Rose took a deep breath. Just someone who knew your mother a long time ago. He looked like us, Jordan said bluntly. Exactly like us. Was that? Jessie couldn't even finish the question, the possibility too enormous to put into words. Rose's eyes filled with tears. This isn't the time or place. We'll talk at home. No, Jamie said, firmly. We want to know now. Was that our father? The word hung in the air between them, strange and foreign on his tongue. Father. A concept so abstract it might as well have been unicorn or dragon. Rose looked at each of her grandsons in turn, seeing the determination in their identical faces. She sighed, suddenly looking every one of her 72 years. Yes, she admitted quietly. That was Michael. Your father. Our father, Jessie repeated, as if testing how the words felt. The man who left Mom before we were born. Rose's expression hardened. It's complicated. Doesn't seem that complicated. To me, Jordan said, anger flaring. He abandoned Mom when she was pregnant and now he shows up at her funeral? What gives him the right? He didn't know, Rose said. The triplets stared at her, uncomprehending. What do you mean he didn't know? Jamie asked. Rose glanced around the nearly empty cemetery. Not here. Please, boys. Let's go home. I'll tell you everything there. They wanted to argue, to demand answers immediately, but the grief and exhaustion of the day weighed heavily on them. Besides, there was something in their grandmother's eyes, a mixture of sadness and guilt, that made them hesitate. Fine, Jamie finally said. But we want the whole truth. No more secrets. Rose nodded, resigned. The whole truth, I promise. As they walked to the car, each boy glanced back at their mother's grave, the single white lily a bright spot against the dark earth, and beyond the cemetery gates the shadowy figure of a man who might be their father was just disappearing around a corner, walking out of their lives as suddenly as he had appeared in them. The drive home from the cemetery was silent. Rose gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. In the back seat, the triplets sat shoulder to shoulder, each lost in his own thoughts but drawing comfort from the physical presence of his brothers. The house felt emptier than ever when they arrived. Friends had cleaned up after the post-funeral gathering, leaving behind only a refrigerator full of casseroles and a vase of white lilies on the kitchen table. The sight of those flowers, the same as the one in Diana's casket, the same as the one the stranger had placed on her grave, made Rose pause. "Sit down, boys," she said, gesturing to the kitchen chairs. "I'll make some tea." "We don't want tea, Grandma," Jamie said firmly. "We want answers." Rose sighed heavily, but nodded. She sat down at the table, her small hands folded in front of her. The triplets took seats around her, their faces serious and expectant. "His name is Michael Harrington," Rose began. "He and Diana met in college. They were both 19. Our age," Jesse said softly. Rose nodded. They fell in love. The kind of love you see in movies. Intense, all-consuming. After graduation, they moved in together. They were saving for a house, talking about marriage. "So what happened?" Jordan asked. "Why did he leave her when she got pregnant?" Rose's eyes filled with tears. "He didn't know she was pregnant when he left. And he didn't leave her, not the way you think." The triplets exchanged confused glances. "I don't understand," Jamie said. "Either he left or he didn't." Rose took a deep breath. There was a misunderstanding, a terrible one. Diana thought Michael had been unfaithful. There was another woman, a co-worker of his, who was interested in him. She made it seem like something had happened between them. "And Mom believed her?" Jesse asked. Diana was young and insecure, and she just found out she was pregnant, though she hadn't told Michael. Yet, she was emotional, scared. Rose shook her head sadly. Instead of confronting him, she packed her things and left while he was at work. She left a note saying she knew about the other woman and never wanted to see him again. But if he was innocent, why didn't he come after her? "Fight for her?" Jordan demanded. "He did," Rose said quietly. "He called. He came to my house looking for her. But Diana refused to speak to him. She was heartbroken, convinced he had betrayed her. And stubborn, so stubborn. She told me to tell him she'd moved away, that she wanted nothing to do with him. And he just gave up?" Jamie's voice held disbelief. Rose looked down at her hands. "Eventually, after weeks of trying. He even came to my door with an engagement ring begging to speak to her. But Diana was in her first trimester, sick and emotional. She hid in my back bedroom and made me send him away." "Did he know about us?" Jesse asked, the question they all needed answered. Rose shook her head. "No, Diana never told him she was pregnant. She was going to the day she found out about the supposed affair. After that, she decided to raise you on her own." "But why?" Jordan pressed. "Even if she didn't want him back, we had a right to know our father. He had a right to know about us." "Your mother thought she was protecting you," Rose said. "And maybe protecting herself too. She was hurt and proud. By the time she might have reconsidered, months had passed. Michael had taken a job overseas, Singapore, I think. It seemed easier to just move forward." The triplets sat in stunned silence, trying to process this revelation. Their entire understanding of their family history had been upended in a matter of minutes. "So our whole lives have been based on a misunderstanding?" Jamie finally said, anger seeping into his voice. "Some woman lied, and Mom believed her? And that's why we grew up without a father?" "It wasn't that simple," Rose protested. "Diana truly believed Michael had betrayed her. And later, she found out the other woman had lied. But by then it had been almost a year. Michael was gone. She was raising 3 babies on her own. She made the best decision she could at the time." "How did he find out about the funeral?" Jesse asked. "If he didn't know about us, why was he there?" Rose's expression grew troubled. "I don't know. I was as shocked to see him as you were. You should have told us this years ago, Jordan said, his voice hard. You and Mom both. Rose flinched at his tone, but nodded. You're right. But it wasn't my secret to tell. Diana made me promise. Her eyes filled with tears. I urged her to tell you, especially after she got sick. But she was afraid. Afraid you'd be angry with her. Afraid of disrupting your lives when she wouldn't be there to help you through it. So, instead, we find out like this? By seeing a stranger at her grave, who looks exactly like us. Jamie stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. It's not fair. None of this is fair. Life rarely is, Jamie, Rose said softly. Your mother made mistakes. We all do. But everything she did out of love for you three. The kitchen fell silent, each person lost in thought. Outside, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the snow-covered yard. Inside, three boys struggled to reconcile the mother they had known with this new, more complicated version of her. I want to meet him, Jesse suddenly announced. His brothers looked at him in surprise. Michael, Jesse clarified. Our father. I want to meet him properly. We don't even know if he's still in town, Jordan pointed out, or if he wants to meet us. Did you see his face when he looked at us? Jesse countered. Of course he wants to meet us. How would we even find him? Jamie asked. Rose cleared her throat. I know where he's staying. 3 pairs of identical green eyes turned to her in surprise. He gave me his card at the cemetery, she explained. He's at the Lakeside Inn through the weekend. He said if you wanted to talk to him, he'd be there. And you were going to tell us this when? Jordan asked, an edge to his voice. I wasn't sure what to do, Rose admitted. I needed time to think. This is all happening so fast. Our whole lives we've had a father out there who didn't know we existed, Jamie said. And now we know he exists, but we don't know him. I'd say things are moving too slowly, not too fast. Rose looked at each of her grandsons in turn. What do you want to do? The triplets exchanged glances, having one of their silent conversations. Finally, Jamie spoke for all of them. We want to meet him. Tomorrow. Rose nodded slowly. I'll call him in the morning. That night after their grandmother had gone to bed, the triplets gathered in Jamie's room. They sat on his bed, the 3 sealed envelopes from Diana between them. Should we read them now? Jesse asked, picking up the one with his name. Mom wanted us to wait until after the funeral, Jordan reminded him. It is after the funeral, Jesse pointed out. Jamie stared at the envelopes. I think she meant for these to explain things. But now we already know the big secret. Maybe there's more, Jordan suggested. Things Grandma doesn't know. They sat in silence for a moment, each weighing the decision. Let's read them, Jamie finally said. Together. They each took their envelope, carefully breaking the seal. 3 identical letters written in their mother's neat handwriting unfolded in their hands. My darling son, each letter began. By the time you read this, I will be gone. There are no words to express how much I love you and your brothers, or how sorry I am to leave you. You have been the greatest joy of my life, my reason for getting up each morning, my comfort when times were hard. There's something I should have told you long ago, something I kept from you out of pride and fear and maybe a little selfishness. You have a father. His name is Michael Harrington, and he never knew about you. It was my choice to keep you from him, a choice I made when I was young and hurt and scared. I believed he had betrayed me, and I ran away before telling him I was pregnant. By the time I learned the truth, that he had been faithful all along, too much time had passed. I told myself it was better this way, simpler. I was wrong. I've enclosed his last known address and phone number. I don't know if they're still current, it's been 16 years. But if you want to find him, this is where to start. I hope someday you can forgive me for keeping him from you and you from him. It was never about protecting you from him. He would have been a wonderful father. I was protecting myself from the mistake I made, the years I wasted, the hurt I caused. Remember that I have loved you every moment of your life and will love you beyond it. And remember that whatever choice you make about reaching out to your father, I support you completely. All my love. Always, Mom. At the bottom of each letter was an address in Boston and a phone number. The boys looked up at each other, eyes wet, with tears. She was going to tell us, Jessie said softly, before she died. But now we found out anyway, Jordan added. And he's here, not in Boston. Jamie folded his letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. I wonder how he found out about the funeral. Mom said she didn't think he even knew where we lived. Maybe Grandma knows, Jessie suggested. I don't think so. She seemed genuinely surprised to see him there, Jordan said. We'll ask him tomorrow, Jamie decided. We'll ask him everything. The triplets sat together on the bed, shoulder to shoulder, each holding his mother's final words. Outside the night was clear and cold, stars brilliant in the winter sky. Tomorrow would bring a meeting 16 years in the making. 3 sons face to face with the father who never knew they existed. In his hotel room across town, Michael Harrington sat on the edge of his bed, staring at an old photograph. A young couple smiled at the camera, arms around each other, eyes bright with love and plans for the future. He touched the woman's face gently, then looked at the 3 school photos spread out beside it, pictures he had obtained just days ago, images of 3 identical boys with his eyes and Diana's smile. I have sons, he whispered into the empty room. I have sons. The Lakeside Inn was a small 2-story building on the edge of town. Its faded blue paint and wraparound porch gave it a quaint, almost nostalgic feel. On any other day, the triplets might have appreciated its charm. Today, they barely noticed it as Rose pulled into the parking lot. Are you sure you're ready for this? She asked, turning off the engine but making no move to get out. The boys exchanged glances in the back seat. No, Jamie admitted, but we're doing it anyway. Rose nodded, understanding. I called him this morning. He's waiting in the lobby. Did you tell him about us? Jessie asked. That we're coming? Just that you wanted to meet him, Rose said. Nothing more. I thought the rest should come from you. They got out of the car slowly, no one in a hurry to reach the entrance. The midday sun glinted off the snow, making them squint. They'd dressed carefully that morning. No hoodies or jeans, but button-down shirts and khakis, as if meeting their father for the first time required some formality. At the door, Rose hesitated. Do you want me to come in with you? The triplets looked at each other again, having another of their silent conversations. No, Jordan finally said. We need to do this ourselves. Rose nodded, her eyes filling with tears. I'll wait in the car. Take as long as you need. She watched as her grandsons squared their shoulders and walked through the door, 3 identical figures moving in unconscious unison. For a moment, she could see Diana in them, the same determined tilt of the chin, the same courage in the face of the unknown. The lobby was small but cozy, with a stone fireplace and comfortable seating. A man stood as they entered, rising from an armchair by the window. Michael Harrington was tall and lean, his dark hair shot through with silver at the temples. He wore a simple gray sweater and black pants, his face a mask of barely contained emotion. For a long moment, no one spoke. The triplets stood just inside the door, taking in the man who had unknowingly given them life. Michael stared back, his eyes moving from one identical face to another in wonder. You're really here, he finally said, his voice rough with emotion. All 3 of you. I'm Jamie, said the triplet in the middle, taking a small step forward. This is Jordan, and that's Jessie. Michael nodded, committing each name to memory. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. We weren't sure either, Jordan said honestly. Michael gestured to the seating area. Would you like to sit down? They moved to the arrangement of chairs and a small sofa near the fireplace. Michael took one chair, while the triplets sat together. On the sofa, a united front. I don't even know where to begin, Michael said after an awkward silence. There's so much to say, So many years to account for. How did you find out about Mom's funeral? Jamie asked, diving straight to one of their most pressing questions. Michael's expression softened at the mention of Diana. A mutual friend from college, Ben Taylor. He's on social media and saw the obituary. He knew I'd want to know, even after all these years. Did you know about us before that? Jesse asked. Did you know Mom had kids? Michael shook his head, pain flashing across his features. No, I had no idea. When Ben called to tell me about Diana's passing, he mentioned she was survived by her triplet sons. I couldn't believe it. I kept asking him to repeat it. And you just dropped everything and came? Jordan's tone held a hint of skepticism. Yes, Michael said simply. I had to. Even if Diana and I had been apart for years, I needed to say goodbye. And honestly, I was curious about her children. I never had a family of my own. The triplets exchanged glances at this revelation. You never got married? Had other kids? Jamie asked. Michael shook his head. No. There was no one after your mother. I dated occasionally, but it never felt right. He paused, then added softly, I didn't know what I was missing until I saw you three at the cemetery. Then it all made sense. What did? Jesse asked. The emptiness, Michael replied. The feeling that something important was missing from my life. It was you. It was always you. The raw emotion in his voice made the triplets shift uncomfortably. They had come prepared for many things. Anger, resentment, even indifference. They hadn't expected this immediate and overwhelming connection. Grandma told us what happened, Jordan said. Between you and Mom. The misunderstanding. Michael's face clouded with old pain. Yes. The biggest mistake of my life was not fighting harder for her. I should have camped on Rose's doorstep until Diana would see me. I should have made her listen. She thought you cheated on her, Jamie said, a question in his voice. I never did, Michael said firmly. Cynthia, the woman who caused the trouble, was a co-worker who wanted more than friendship. When I turned her down, she decided to hurt me by hurting Diana. She told her we'd been having an affair. And Mom believed her, Jesse said. Michael sighed. Your mother was always insecure about our relationship. She couldn't believe someone like me would choose someone like her. What does that mean? Jordan asked, a protective edge to his voice. Diana was brilliant, a scholarship student, studying nursing. I came from money, was in pre-law. She always felt like we came from different worlds. Michael smiled sadly, but that was what I loved about her. She saw the world differently than I did. She made me better. A silence fell over the group, each lost in thoughts of what might have been. She wrote us letters, Jamie finally said. Before she died, she was going to tell us about you. Michael's eyes widened. She was? Jesse nodded. She left your address in Boston, but it was from 16 years ago. I moved back there after Singapore, Michael confirmed. I've been practicing international law. I have my own firm now. So you've done well for yourself, Jordan observed. Professionally, yes, Michael agreed. Personally, he shook his head. Finding out about you three, seeing you at the cemetery, it's made me realize how empty my life has been. The naked honesty in his voice made the triplets uncomfortable again. This man was a stranger to them, yet he was looking at them with such longing, such instant love that they didn't know how to respond. What do you want from us? Jamie asked bluntly. Michael seemed taken aback by the question. I don't know, exactly. A chance to know you, to be part of your lives if you'll let me. We already have a life, Jordan pointed out. We're moving in with Grandma Rose. We have college applications out. We have plans. I understand, Michael said quickly. I'm not trying to disrupt anything. He struggled to find the right words. I've missed 16 years. Birthdays, first steps, school plays, basketball games, everything. I can't get that back, I know. But maybe I could be there for what comes next. The triplets exchanged glances again, their identical green eyes, his eyes, communicating silently. "We need time," Jamie finally said. "This is a lot to process." "Of course," Michael nodded. "I'll be in town until Sunday, and after that, well, I can come back. Or you could visit me in Boston, whatever you're comfortable with." "Our mom just died," Jesse said quietly. "We're not comfortable with anything right now." Michael's face softened with sympathy. "I'm so sorry. I can't imagine how hard this has been for you, losing Diana and then having all of this sprung on you." "Did you still love her?" Jordan asked suddenly. "After all these years?" Michael didn't hesitate. "Yes. I never stopped." His simple answer hung in the air between them, laden with regret and might-have-beens. Jamie stood up and his brothers followed suit. "We should go. Grandma's waiting." Michael rose as well, trying to hide his disappointment. "Of course. Thank you for coming. It means more than I can say." He reached into his pocket and pulled out 3 business cards. "My cell number is on here, and my email. Anytime, day or night, if you want to talk." The triplets took the cards, tucking them into their pockets. "Can I?" Michael hesitated, then pressed on. "Would it be all right if I hugged you, just once, before you go?" The boys looked at each other, uncertain. Finally, Jamie gave a small nod and stepped forward. Michael embraced him carefully as if he might break. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. Jordan went next, his hug a bit stiffer than his brother's, but genuine. Jesse was last, and when Michael held him, the youngest. Triplet surprised everyone by holding on a moment longer than his brothers had. "You have her smile," Michael told him softly. "All of you do." As they turned to leave, Michael called out, "Jamie, Jordan, Jesse." They looked back, and he seemed to be memorizing their faces. "Thank you. For existing. For being here. You are the best thing I never knew I had." Back in the car, Rose didn't ask questions. She simply started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. In the rearview mirror, she could see Michael standing in the inn's doorway watching them leave. "You okay?" she asked after several minutes of silence. "I don't know," Jamie answered honestly. "He seems nice." "He loved Mom," Jesse added. "Still loves her. He wants to be part of our lives," Jordan said, staring out the window. Rose nodded. "That's his right to want. It's your right to decide if that's what you want too." When they arrived home, the triplets went straight to Diana's room. Nothing had been moved or packed away yet. It still smelled faintly of her perfume. They sat on her bed, taking comfort in the familiar surroundings. "What do we do now?" Jesse asked the question they were all thinking. Jamie picked up a framed photo from the nightstand, Diana with her 3 boys at their middle school graduation, all 4 smiling widely at the camera. "Mom wanted us to know him," he said. "She said so in her letters, but that doesn't mean we have to let him into our lives right away," Jordan pointed out. "We could take it slow. Emails, maybe phone calls." "I liked him," Jesse admitted. "He seemed genuine." They fell silent, each thinking about the man they had just met. The stranger who was also their father, whose blood ran in their veins, whose features they wore on their faces. "I think," Jamie said slowly, "that Mom would want us to give him a chance, not for his sake, but for ours." His brothers nodded in agreement. "We have to finish high school first," Jordan said practically, "and figure out college, but maybe we could visit him in Boston this summer." "As a start," Jesse added. Jamie put the photo back on the nightstand. Beside it was a small white lily in a bud vase, saved from their mother's funeral. He touched one of its petals gently. "Mom kept us from him because she thought she was protecting us," he said. "But maybe knowing him is what we need now." The 3 brothers sat together on their mother's bed, surrounded by her things, feeling her presence all around them. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft flakes drifting past the window. Inside, 3 young men who had always known exactly who they were began the process of discovering who they might become, with a father they never knew they had until they saw him at their mother's grave.